With the Strixhaven lore coming to a close and having a chance to breathe, it's time for the TLDR version condensed down into its all MTG lore goodness. Let's follow the story of Strixhaven through the story spotlight cards for this set. Let's begin with a humble invitation. With a letter of acceptance, the young planeswalking twins Will and Rowan Kenrith are whisked from their arena battleground of Kylum to the plane of Arcavios. The letter was sent by another planeswalker, Kasmina, a mage and mentor looking to foster the growth and education of youthful planeswalkers throughout the multiverse. She had observed their feats on Eldraine, their home plane, as well as their continued training on Kylum, and believed them to be perfect candidates for Strixhaven. Strixhaven is the premier center of magecraft education throughout the entire multiverse. If you want to learn how to truly wield powerful spells, you go to Strixhaven. Always curious of how much they could learn, the twins accept the invitation, and after getting permission from Garrick Wildspeaker, who was looking after them for their safety, they traveled with Kasmina to Strixhaven. Strixhaven, however, is not as safe as some would suggest. Because of its early origins, the school has become a center of controversy for some. Back in the ancient days of Arcavios, the world's mana collided with that of another nearby plane, creating dual enemy mana surges. From these snarls, 5 elder dragons were hatched, and they wielded powerful magic. As the plane settled and mortal races began to evolve, these elder dragons became annoyed at these feeble minds bumbling away with their magic. As brutish and as untrained as they were, the mortal races used this untapped mana of Strixhaven to devastating consequences. During an era known as the Blood Age, in which fields were drenched in endless costly conflicts, these ancient barbaric practices were brought to an end by the Elder Dragons, who pitied the wills of mortals, but understood their temptation to utilize their magic. Together, they decided to educate and properly train the people of Arcavios in proper spellcraft, founding the Strixhaven School for Mages, and locking away the dark evil magic that gave the Blood War its name. Still, some will this plane see the Elder Dragons who formed colleges based on their magical ideologies as nothing more than tyrants with elites who do nothing but stifle their potential. One such person who sees Strixhaven more as a source of oppression is named Extus Nar. And yes, I know this card has a flip side, but that part comes later. Extus Nar was once a prominent student at Strixhaven, a masterful linguist of the spoken word and arrogant to boot. A perfect match for the Silver Quill College. Quickly, he excelled and was seen as a protege for his time, leaning into the common perception that he could one day become the next Oracle of Arcavios, a position of great prestige bestowed on the most powerful mortal mage on the plane by the Elder Dragons themselves. However, Extus was passed over for this opportunity, and let's just say he doesn't take personal failings very well. He lashed out at teachers, his peers, the dragon, everyone he felt like he was personally stifled by in this corrupt, tyrannical system just because he couldn't measure up to his own expectations. Classic Silverquill. So Extus went out and found other Strixhaven dropouts who formed a collective of burnouts called the Oriq. In the card Rise of Extus, we see Extus wrestle control of the Oriq from their previous leader, in an event we don't really get much detail on in the story. But now, Extus has his cult of like-minded outcasts, and preparations were made for his personal revenge. Meanwhile, the planeswalker Liliana had traveled to Strixhaven under the false guise of a professor named Onyx. She was once a student at this school, having attended the Witherbloom College, but she came back seeking ancient knowledge on a possible spell to resurrect Gideon Jora, another planeswalker who had sacrificed his life to save hers during the War of the Spark event. Full of guilt, she pleaded with Beladros, the Witherbloom Elder Dragon, who knew of such a spell but refused to give it to Liliana. Fearing its use in mortal hands, she walked away empty-handed. Liliana was disappointed, but was soon distracted by a new threat, the Oriq, who she had discovered plumbing the forbidden secrets of Strixhaven within its vast biblioplex. Taking the advice of another Elder Dragon in her long life, Liliana decides to honor Gid's memory rather than resurrecting him, and looks to protect the school from the Oriq threat. With the school year beginning, Kasmina drops off the twins, who quickly acclimate to these collegiate affairs, mostly by forcing themselves into random duels with the students. This calm before the storm is represented in Mentor's guidance. As the card suggests, Strixhaven would test their skills as well as their character, and although they are twins, Will and Rowan's personalities are starting to diverge quite wildly. Rowan is becoming much more powerful and obsessed with strength, as Will is becoming more careful, reserved, and focused on studies. So it's a classic red versus blue mage identity. But still, this causes friction in their relationship for the first time during their freshman year. At the same time, another Planeswalker enters the scene, Lukka, a character from Ikoria who too was a misfit on his home world and shunned by a society that didn't quite mesh with him. As he wanders Arcavios, word of a foreign mage who can bond with animals hits the rumor mills. The Oriq get word of this, and Extus arranges a meeting with Lukka. After being badly treated by the natives of this world and hearing word of the strict rules set down by Strixhaven, Lukka joins the Oriq in exchange for some future knowledge or power or something else from Extus. Oh yeah, and he also magically bonds with a little cute fox named Mila. It's cute, but something less cute is also revealed, beasts associated with the Oriq known as mage hunters. These monsters are attracted to and feed off of arcane energy, making them especially dangerous for wizards to face off against. Extus has planned to use these beasts in an attack on the school, and Lukka could be the one who leads them. Lukka becomes obsessed with the idea of saving Arcavios from the tyranny of Strixhaven. Yeah, this tyrannical school filled with children. Not a good look, Lukka. To combat this growing threat to Strixhaven, Liliana Professor Onyx reaches out to some promising students she knows to be Planeswalkers, Will and Rowan. She encounters them in Professor's warning and begins personally schooling them in defense against the dark arts or combative spellcraft, as Magic the Gathering would put it. Will and Rowan specifically, is eager to learn this type of magic and put it into practice, while Will again wants to play things smart and reads up on their potential foe and the secrets they look to steal from the Biblioplex. The twins also explore their extracurriculars, having joined the Prismari school because is it colors and their flair for the dramatic. The twins are ushered in with an explosive welcome as their relationship continues to fracture, with Rowan going out and making new friends while ignoring her studies, and Will taking his studies just far too seriously and not applying what he has learned into practice. Still, both of them take some breaks to experience the joys of collegiate life, such as a game called Mage Tower, which really pushes their skills to the limit in a very fun environment. Still, the Oriq were gaining in both strength and support. Students who question their goals at the school, who drop out, those who were expelled or failed, were constantly being recruited by the Oriq agents. And through the temptation by the Oriq, their numbers swelled. Will and Rowan, with Professor Onyx's mentorship, hit the books on some practical research. They needed to learn everything they could to face the coming calamity, with Rowan learning about the explosive force of powerful spells, and Will diving into the dark secrets of the Blood Age, the forbidden knowledge that the Oriq, and Extus in particular, were looking to plunder. Kasmina again appears after tracking this Lukka character for quite a while. Through her Owl Scouts, she found that he has officially been invited into the Oriq as a crucial part of their plan, and now he's sneaking into the campus grounds. Kasmina looks to put an end to this scheme and confronts the wayward bonder. Their conversation is brief, and the fight is even briefer. Kasmina thought that Lukka could one day be an ally to them all, not just the school, but the multiverse, while Lukka sees the school and the dragons who lead it as nothing more than tyrants who oppress those who practice magic in a way not to their liking. They butt heads and fists and spells, but clearly Lukka is outmatched. The magic of Kasmina is too powerful, and with his little pet subdued in a bubble, Lukka's sword just isn't enough. In this test of talents, Lukka is found wanting. Still, his appearance here on the campus wasn't meant for this fight, as Lukka now commands the legions of mage hunters and begins to set them loose on the school. Kasmina realizes the severity of this threat and alerts the school officials, even warning the dragons, as Lukka returns to Extus, a willing pawn in someone else's personal revenge. The mage hunters begin their assault. Professor Onyx helps lead the defense of Strixhaven, and students and teachers alike work to push back the mage hunter attack. Liliana reaches out through the ether and finds that these beasts are, in fact, being controlled by a singular figure, an innately powerful mage who she thought must have been another Planeswalker. This, of course, piques her interest as a threat she's very familiar with facing, but still, something seems a bit off. As they defend the campus, Oriq senses that this is not the grand scheme of someone like Extus, who wanted to not just destroy Strixhaven, but level the idea of this institution to the ground, turning it to rubble, never to be rebuilt again. For that, he needed something more powerful than a bunch of mage hunters. He needed the Snarl. That twisting knot of pure magic that rested just below the college within the Biblioplex, that was his true target, his goal, the ancient secrets and spells of the Biblioplex combined with this raw mana of the Snarl. Now, with all the school's deans and defenses directed to the courtyards, there was no one left to protect the Biblioplex. Professor Oriq saves the twins from an Oriq attacking them and redirects them to this Biblioplex. Kasmina, who left for reinforcements, returned successful in her mission. The Elder Dragons appear on the field of battle and turn the tide in the school's favor. With their draconic intervention, the mage hunters are bathed in dragonfire and the Oriq members flee for their very lives. Not even Lukka would dare risk a face-to-face encounter with an Elder Dragon. They hoped that these old beings were so aloof to the prattle of mortals that they wouldn't even bother coming to the defense of their own creation. But how wrong they were. Extus, of course, knew the dragons would eventually show up, leaving his followers to their demise. But this, of course, was at its very beginning a selfish movement, and their lives meant nothing to him. Rather, Extus found himself directly where he needed to be, pouring the words of an ancient Blood Age spell into the untapped mana of the Snarl. As Professor Oriq and her twin students appear, they find Extus mid-chant with a summoning spell, conjuring an avatar that represented the entire Blood Age era, the embodiment of every drop of blood spilled during those dark days. Extus awakened the Blood Avatar. He looked to unleash this being of pure malice and destruction upon all of Arcavios, starting here with Strixhaven. Fearing this powerful professor, this Oriq person who was on him since the very beginning, could foil his plans, Extus cast an exhausting spell to translocate her miles away into a forest, unable to make it back nearly in enough time to stop him. And for some reason, she can't just, planeswalk her way back, but whatever. This left Extus alone with two first-year students, hardly a threat he believed, but Will and Rowan had trained and studied hard with their mentor and were prepared for this fight. Rowan had grown so much in strength during her training, she crackled with power as she too tapped into the powerful Snarl. She became transcendent and also terrible. The power looked to overwhelm her, but her brother Will was there with his own set of knowledge and skills. He was able to temper her unbridled power, control that surge of emotions, and direct it to himself. She was strong enough to channel the energy, but Will had the smarts to shape it into a spell. From their culmination of studies, Will and Rowan overrode the control spell Extus had used on the Blood Avatar and cast treason on it. The Blood Avatar turned on its summoner and finally crushed Extus Nar, killing the would-be anarchist. Will then begins to unsummon the Blood Avatar, returning it to the twisting dimension of fear and rage from whence it came. But as the lid was finally being closed on the portal, the Blood Avatar reached out with its axe and cut clean through Will's leg. The Blood Avatar was gone, but so was Will's leg, with both he and Rowan collapsing from exhaustion and pain, having to be rescued by the other professors who came to check out the disturbance happening inside. Weeks later, Will wakes up. They had won, the school was saved, and a new memorial stands for those who had fallen in Strixhaven's defense. A lot of credit goes to these first years, who, after it all, continue with their studies, though they agree now that their personalities have certainly changed. Rowan thinks they have learned enough, while Will, without a leg, wants to continue the semester. They know they're different, but reaffirm that they still love each other regardless. Kasmina tracks Lukka one last time, watching as he and the scattered remaining Oriq forces wander off scrounging for food and shelter, no longer a real threat to Strixhaven. Now her attention turns to people of more interest, especially for Kasmina's more personal goals. Rowan has proven herself quite strong, and Will too shows great promise. Together they are exactly what she's looking for in recruits for her shadowy cabal, a group of planeswalkers joining together for a threat far greater than this Blood Avatar. But for now, she lets the twins rest, making sure her owls are always out watching. Professor Oriq is proud of her students and her school. She returns after a long hike back to Strixhaven and walks in as Professor Liliana Vess, finally dropping that old disguise. The other professors hail her actions in defending the campus and in warning about the Oriq threat before anyone else really took them seriously. they elect to offer her a permanent position at the school, and all of that's despite her lying about her identity, which no one really questions for some reason. It seems like a disqualifying factor in a job application, but okay. Anyway, Liliana agrees to become a professor here, again with her new goal to be a good person in honoring Gideon's memory. She thinks teaching responsible magic to young mages is the best way to do that. Liliana has a condition though. She wants to teach a course on necromancy, her wheelhouse, and of course with the eventual unintended consequence of making, I'm sure, new villains for Strixhaven. What can I say? Necromancers just make perfect threats in future stories, and this is going to be a great way to make new villains for this plane. And that, you guys, is the story of Strixhaven in its entirety as told by the cards themselves. Final thoughts. Well, if you take this story for what it is and not add in the side stories, it does a decent job with a pretty monumental task. With Wizards moving to this single set block structure and every set having its own plane and story taking place almost independent of the one that preceded it, and only 5 written articles a story, there isn't a lot of room for world building, and the lore of Strixhaven suffers from that. I know plenty of players who don't even know that Strixhaven is just the school and that the plane is actually called Arcavios, for example. The greater world outside of the school isn't explored. We don't understand much of the Elder Dragons, the Oracle, the Archaics, or the history of the Blood Age. That effort was all put into building the lore of the school and the characters in the story. I do think some of these points hurt some characters' lore. Liliana, for example, being a former student, doesn't fit with any of the canon. Kasmina ended up not doing much at all, and Lukka is just, well, he's Lukka. And he continues to be a punching bag of a character for Wizards of the Coast, who really need to find some strong, compelling enemy planeswalkers soon. Jeez. Still, the growth we see out of Will and Rowan is commendable, as they look to be powerful includes to a larger story taking place with them. And despite some hangups, Liliana grows a lot with her own self-worth and understanding what it means to be a good person. It isn't always enough to be the occasional hero. The day-to-day of doing good for others is what Gideon stood for, and that's what she looks to do now as a teacher. So as I'll say as a blanket statement, the one block set formula is the biggest killer to MTG's story, and it again hurts Strixhaven, but it still succeeds in being an entertaining tale that develops characters. We just need more consistency between sets and stories in the long run to make it all feel worth it. Anyway guys, thanks so much for your support on the Strixhaven lore videos, as well as my videos for the upcoming Dungeons & Dragons set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. I'm doing loads of speculation and predictions right now, and I'm glad that a lot of you guys are enjoying them. Remember, you can support the channel by being a member, liking, and ticking that notification bell. You can also join me live on the channel Mondays and Thursdays, 6 PM Eastern Standard Time, for some MTG discussions. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!